All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about Airbnb and how a pretty wild idea completely upended an entire industry. But this isn't just a story about travel. It's really about how they built a business by solving one of the most basic human problems there is, our fear of strangers.
I mean, really think about this question for a second. This was the absolute biggest hurdle Airbnb had to overcome. It wasn't about building a slick website or having enough places to list. It was all about trust. So how on earth did they convince all of us that this was not only safe, but actually a good idea?
Well, to figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. And believe me, this story doesn't start in some fancy boardroom. Nope. It starts with a problem I think a lot of us can relate to. So, picture this. It's 2007 in San Francisco. Two designers, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, are freaking out about making rent. At the same time, a huge design conference is rolling into town, and every single hotel room is booked solid. So they think, hey, what if we just threw some air mattresses on our floor and rented them out? They called it Air Bed and Breakfast, and with that, the whole thing was born. And what they accidentally stumbled upon was this giant gap in the market. See, you had this two-sided problem. On one side, travelers were stuck with expensive, sold-out hotels. And on the other, you had literally millions of homes with spare rooms just sitting empty. They were completely wasted assets. The genius of Airbnb was just connecting the dots between that supply and that demand. But just connecting people wasn't going to cut it. The real roadblock, the thing that could have killed the whole idea right there, was that deep-seated distrust we all have. So they couldn't just build a marketplace. They had to actually engineer a trust machine right into the product itself. And they did this in a really smart, methodical way, with what you could call the 4 pillars of trust. Each pillar was designed to knock down a specific fear. First, the fear of, who is this person? That was handled by two-way reviews. Both the host and the guest review each other, so everyone has to be on their best behavior. Next, the fear that the place looks nothing like the pictures? Boom, professional photography. The fear of getting ripped off? They handled that with secure payments. Airbnb holds the money until 24 hours after you check in. And finally, the biggest fear for hosts? What if someone wrecks my house? That's where host insurance or air cover comes in. It was an absolute masterclass in building a product around human psychology. And that photography thing? It was a total game changer. In the early days, they noticed listings with bad photos just weren't getting booked. So the founders literally flew to New York, rented a nice camera, and went door to door taking professional photos of their hosts' apartments for them. And the results? Bookings exploded. It was proof that trust isn't just about safety, it's also about making things look legit and high quality. So once they cracked that trust code, their business model could really, well, take off. And it's fundamentally different from a traditional hotel chain. Hotels have to buy land, build massive buildings, you know the drill. It's incredibly expensive. Airbnb, on the other hand, has what's called an asset-light model. They own zero real estate. That means no inventory costs, no maintenance, and, this is the key, basically infinite scalability. Now, that asset-light model is perfect for explosive growth, but they still had to solve that classic chicken and egg problem for any marketplace. You know, how do you get guests if you don't have any hosts? And how do you get hosts if you don't have any guests? Well, their growth playbook is pretty legendary. Okay, so first, they made a smart call. Focus on getting hosts, the supply side, first. Their most famous move was the Craigslist growth hack. They built a simple little tool that let their hosts automatically cross-post their Airbnb listing onto Craigslist. It was brilliant. They were basically funneling a huge existing audience directly to their platform. Then, they didn't try to conquer the world all at once. They went city by city, building up a ton of listings in places like Paris and London. And all of this work was designed to kickstart the most powerful engine in tech, the network effect. The more hosts you have, the better the platform is for guests, which of course attracts even more hosts. It's a self-perpetuating flywheel. So, you solve the trust problem, you nail the growth strategy, and what do you get? Well, you get a company that completely reshaped the global travel industry. The scale of what they've built is it's mind-boggling. Let's just look at some numbers. Right now, there are over 8 million active Airbnb listings around the world. To give you some context, that is more rooms than the top 7 hotel chains. We're talking Marriott, Hilton, all of them combined. And their reach is just everywhere. We're talking more than 220 countries and regions. This isn't just a big city thing. You can find an Airbnb in a remote cabin in the mountains or a houseboat in a canal. It's truly global.
And of course, that kind of scale leads to some pretty massive financial numbers. They're pulling in over $12 billion in annual revenue. That makes them one of the biggest players in hospitality on the entire planet. And, I'll say it again, they did it all without owning a single hotel room. But, when you get that big, the game changes. Success at this level brings a whole new set of problems, and Airbnb has had to keep evolving to stay on top. They knew they couldn't just be about finding a place to sleep forever, so they started expanding into other parts of travel. They launched experiences, where you can book things like cooking classes or guided tours with locals. They're also leaning into the whole remote work trend with long-term stays. The mission is pretty clear. They want to own your entire trip, from start to finish. But the road ahead has some serious bumps. Regulations are probably their number one headache right now. Cities like New York and Barcelona are really cracking down hard on short-term rentals. They're also facing backlash over how Airbnb might be affecting housing prices, not to mention ongoing issues with safety and fraud. And all the while, huge competitors like Booking.com are breathing down their neck. So when you boil it all down, what are the big lessons here? First, start with a real problem you actually have. For them, it was just making rent. Second, and this is the big one, build trust directly into your product. It's not an afterthought, it's the foundation. Third, the asset-light model is insanely powerful for scaling quickly. And finally, once you build that network effect, it becomes your defense, your moat, making it incredibly tough for anyone else to catch up. And trust me, they are not finished yet. This quote from their CEO, Brian Chesky, says it all. Their ambition isn't just to be a big travel company, it's to be the travel company. The only question is, can they navigate all these new challenges to actually pull it off? That's the billion-dollar question we'll all be watching.